We arrived at the trailhead around 3 on a Friday before a holiday weekend, and there were only a few parking spots left. It was a hot day and people were taking advantage of the cool water. It was tempting to join them, but we had about 9 miles to do and a creek to ford before dark, so we shouldered our packs and set off. We had planned to come out here earlier in the summer, but the fire and smoke kept us away. We tried leaving early to beat the crowds, but just ran into them as we inched along the highway. Now walking down the trail, we were nervous about how crowded the lake would be, but there was only one way to find out. This trail follows the river for much of the way, but is usually out of reach with surprisingly few water sources. While there are trees throughout the hike, they were sparse, so I would say only about half the trail is what I would consider truly shaded. Most of it is pretty parched, with views fading in and out between the tree trunks. It's definitely not a flat trail, but for the Cascades, it comes pretty close, which was a nice relief on a hot afternoon. We finally reached the ford, just half a mile from camp, and found it to be very wide but very tame. I'm not sure what is upstream, but you might want to consider getting water here. We found the water at the lake to be a bit scummy, and even though horses are supposed to camp away from the lake, there was a lot of horse poop in one of the campsites right by the water. Finally, the moment of truth, camp, and obviously nothing to worry about. The views at Waptus totally blew me away. The fact that you can stay at a place like this with nothing more than self-registering at the trailhead is incredible. This place felt national park level to me. At night, a chorus of owl calls drifted across the lake. The stillness and magical cycles of light and shadow gave me a sense of awe that I generally feel on a mountaintop. I am so grateful for the ability to completely disconnect and experience this with a great group of people. We got the pleasure of great neighbors on this lake, including one person we enjoyed so much that they joined us on a future trip. If the day before had been flat, once you leave the lake, this is as close to the opposite as it gets. It is a truly punishing climb, with over 2,300 feet of elevation gain in under 2 miles. It isn't that much further than Waptus, so many people go straight to Spade Lake and camp there. If you choose to do that, make sure you have plenty of water and are prepared for the heat, because this slope was oppressively hot in the afternoon. The terrain isn't terrible, but some sections were littered with small rocks and pine cones that were large enough to roll underfoot and catch you off guard, especially when we were hot and tired on the way back down. The plants all seemed to be working with gravity to try and keep us down, with their branches often trying to grab hold of our gear as we pushed uphill. As the trees thin out and the views start to open up, first the thimbleberries and then the blueberries and huckleberries take their place. If you want to know how to identify them, check out the link below. As far as wild edibles go, they are hard to tell apart, but when you guess wrong, you usually just end up with a different delicious berry instead. Generally, the blueberries are the ones that are white or green inside, while the huckleberries will be purple or blue inside. I once took a photo for a family whose kid had purple smudges all over his face, and when he smiled, his teeth were blue. Enjoy the treat as you hike, but if you can help it, try not to overindulge, because they can cause some GI issues if you eat too many. Finally, the trail will level out a bit as you enter the basin. Have you ever been to a valley that smelled like berries? This is one, and it is amazing. It made me think of a Willy Wonka's candy factory, but a bit healthier. Seems like this would be a bear paradise, other than all the people, but we didn't see any signs of bears. During berry season, black bears can eat tens of thousands of berries per day. Their lips and tongues work together to dexterously pick berries as efficiently as fingers, and their claws are perfectly adapted to comb through the plants and remove the berries while leaving most of the foliage intact. There have even been berry picking tools designed to mimic bear claws. As we circumnavigated the lake to make it to the other end for the climb to Venus Lake, the trail stepped up a notch in difficulty again, and wayfinding got important because there was a maze of trails all over the place. The water was cool and crisp here, and it was hot enough on the way back that I even managed to get in the water, but it was too cold to stay in very long. Waptus was a bit mucky, but much warmer, and I highly preferred the swimming there. At the end of the lake, the real adventure part begins. We plunged into vegetation taller than us and followed a faint trail. A GPS track was essential on the way up to the final lake. This is less of a trail and more of just a boot path that scrambles up steep slopes and often disappears across the rocks. Occasionally, there were helpful arrows or rock stacks, but I'm sure they change every year. Set your expectations and enjoy the challenge, both physical and mental, as you seek out the next step. There is a little scrambling where your hands are required, but nothing with much exposure. There are some slopes with a long run out if you were really to take a bad tumble, so I would wait for the snow to fully melt and pick a dry day if possible. It felt a bit like the section between Tuck and Robin Lakes, just much shorter. While Spade Lake was busy, we didn't see anyone else up here. The view looking down towards Spade Lake was excellent, and worth the extra journey on its own in my opinion. One of the oddest things we saw up here were fish around and in Venus Lake, and pretty big ones too. I'm really curious how they got here. It is hard to imagine the government stocking a lake like this, and without some big changes, there's no way they swam up here. Some species have eggs that can occasionally survive a duck's digestion system, so I guess that is a possibility. There are links below to hiking resources and a cool video on how fish get to some of these places. At the lake, we had a decision to make: relax before the long hike back down, or keep going up for one more viewpoint. Of course, I'm the kind of person who always wants to know what's around the next corner, and one of my friends was happy to go with me. I ditched my pack, dunked my shirt in the icy lake, continued on with the refreshing water trickling down my body. This trail looked a bit intimidating from below, but once we were on it, it actually seemed more established than the trail to the lake itself. And what appeared to be scree from below wasn't. We picked our way through yet more berries and tried not to spend too much time grazing. Up at the top, the views were 100% worth it. There weren't any real trails around the top, so we carefully picked our way across the rocks, trying to avoid the delicate alpine plants, while exploring the tarns and peering over the sides of the cliffs. We got back down to Venus to find the rest of our group napping on the rocks, partially refreshed and ready for the journey back to Waptus, our home for one more night. Thank you for joining us on this adventure. There are hiking resources below and information on free ways to help support this channel. The easiest is liking and subscribing. Thank you. Happy exploring.